Good afternoon, lovely to see you, and for the final time, welcome to Early Kickoff in Isolation. This is the 7th show for the last 7 weeks. We've been here just trying to bring a little bit of normality to your world, a little bit of football conversation, plenty of fun, looking back at some classic moments on BT Sport. However, this show might be ending this week, but it's not bad news, because next week is the return of live football here to BT Sport. As you know, the Bundesliga gets going again. We are the home of Bundesliga in the UK. Next weekend, you can see 9 games from the Bundesliga across BT Sport. So you've gone from no football at all to almost more football than you can cope with, but it's not bad, is it? Now, to sign off today, we're asking you, what is the single greatest thing you've seen on a football field? What is the most amazing moment that you've ever witnessed in a match? I'm going to kind of go for what was a bad moment personally, which was a defeat for Norwich, but an amazing moment for me. I was covering for BT Sport, actually, Liverpool against Norwich a few years ago when we were fighting to stay in the Premier League. And we played an amazing game of football. It was 4-4 in about the 95th minute, and I'm sure you know it because we showed the highlights on this show a few weeks ago. Adam Lallana put the ball in the top corner. Liverpool won the game, and in the end, Norwich got relegated. An incredible moment, not a great moment, but I want to hear from you about some of the incredible things that you've witnessed. We've also got another classic match today, which is Manchester City against Leicester, as Leicester were on their way to winning the Premier League a few years ago. And sharing their thoughts a bit later on throughout the programme, two men who've given us all plenty of exciting moments on a football field over the years. Steve McManaman and Owen Hargreaves are with us. Gents, lovely to see you as always. Thank you very much for being part of the programme today. More from them, and all of this is coming your way in the next 90 minutes. The wheels are in motion for the possible return of Premier League football. We've got the latest insight and opinion from Brighton Chief Exec Paul Barber, plus Owen Hargreaves chats to Manchester United boss Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I'll be chatting to Jurgen Klopp about lockdown life at Liverpool, and we've got an exclusive chat with Virgil van Dijk. You voted for a true classic from the BT Sport archives this week. Manchester City hosted 5,000-1 title outsiders Leicester back in February 2016. It's the final instalment of Joe Cole's Football Masterclass. Joe's going to recap all the skills he's brought you and share some of the best videos that you've sent in. And we'll also be looking ahead to the return of live football on our screens. The Bundesliga restarts in a week's time, exclusively live on BT Sport. We'll bring you up to speed with the state of play in German football. I think it's fair to say that Early Kickoff in Isolation is going out with a bang, isn't it? But look, first, let's talk about something that's really dominated the news headlines from a football perspective over the last few days, which of course is Project Restart and the return of the Premier League. I'm very pleased to say that the Brighton Chief Exec Paul Barber joins me. Paul, who has been very outspoken, very honest, sharing his views with the public for the last few weeks, which I think we're all grateful for. Look, Paul, thanks so much for joining us. Every time I pick up a news article or I look at something on social media, I see that it's the bottom 6 versus the rest in this Premier League conversation about the future. Is that accurate, or is that simply convenient?
I think it's probably more convenient than accurate. I think there is concern at all levels about a number of different issues. And I think the one thing that we all crave at the moment, not just in football, but across the rest of the country, is a bit of certainty, a little bit of clarity. And so what we're hoping for from the Premier League meeting this coming week is a complete picture of all the things that we're expected to agree to and sign up to in order to move ahead with the game safely and obviously fairly as well.
Is the complete picture one of the big issues at the moment? Because I've been speaking with other chief execs, sporting directors, managers, footballers. A lot of them are just telling me that they haven't got enough information to be able to make a decision, and whether that is information about the safety of returning as a player or the decision about what your club does, because financially you don't know what the implications are of agreeing to something like neutral venues.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think first of all, we're all 100% united on wanting to play when it's safe to do so. I don't think there's ever been any discrepancy about that. I think the real challenge is that there's so much detail in, first of all, returning to training in different phases, small groups, and then contact, and then obviously getting match ready. And then there's a return to play, which again is almost certainly going to be in stadiums without fans, which is obviously going to be very different for people. And then there's the whole issue of making sure that the players feel entirely safe and comfortable in all of that. And that's very important because they are the people that we need very much on our side in order to get the restart back underway. And obviously their paramount concern is not just their own safety, but that of their family members as well. So we need to do a lot of work over the next few weeks to make sure that, first of all, we have all the detail, and then we can actually make sure that all of the various constituencies are comfortable with what we're planning to do.
But this is a time for all of us to make sacrifice, isn't it? Whether that is the incredible sacrifice of frontline workers, whether it's the much easier sacrifice of people like me having to stay at home for a few weeks, your football club and football is going to have to make sacrifices along the way. And I think some fans just feel, looking at it, that all that the clubs are caring about is themselves and just looking after themselves rather than looking after the good of the game. Is that not fair?
No, I don't think it's fair at all. I think each football club that I'm aware of, not just in the Premier League, but right the way through the pyramid, have been doing everything they possibly can during the crisis, during the lockdown period, to support their communities. For our own part, we've got a COVID-19 testing centre at the Amex. We've been testing over 1,000 people a day, NHS frontline workers and other key workers. That's been a really important part of our contribution to the community. And clubs up and down the country are doing the same. When it comes to the money, I understand and I see the headlines about it's all about the money. Well, to some extent it has to be, because we employ directly and indirectly over 100,000 people in and around the Premier League, including obviously all of the services and suppliers that support us. And therefore it is important, if we can safely restart, that we do so, because it will protect a lot of jobs, and those jobs support very significantly the economies in which they're based. If I look at Brighton, 92% of our staff are living in this city, and therefore keeping their jobs and keeping their incomes is very important, not just to them personally and their families, but also to the economy of this city. And it'll be the same right the way through the football pyramid to larger and lesser degrees. So it's very important, if we can get football back safely and fairly, then we should do so.
And if you were sitting 11th or 12th in the Premier League, would you still be opposed to the plans that are being put forward?
I'd certainly still be opposed to neutral venues, because I don't think neutral venues is the basis in which we started this competition. We started it on the basis of playing 38 games, 19 home, 19 away. Unfortunately, we've got this terrible pandemic. Lots of people have lost their lives, and clearly that's uppermost in our minds. Coming back to play, safety is uppermost in our minds. But also after that, the fairness of the competition, and making sure that every club in the division has the chance to fulfil whatever their objective was at the start of the season. And I think, I'm often accused of self-interest in this debate, and I understand that point. But I think at this stage of the season, every single club in the Premier League is self-interested to some degree. At the top end, you're looking to secure titles and European places. In the middle part of the table, you haven't got a lot of risk to relegation or any risk to relegation, but you're looking to secure the best possible place you can for financial gain. And obviously at the bottom end of the table, we're desperately trying to make sure that we stay in the Premier League that we work very, very hard to get to. And, the jeopardy for not staying in the Premier League is about £200 million. And with that, jobs, and with that, all of the work that we have done over the last 10 years in our case to get to this level being undone. So it's absolutely imperative that we finish the season. We absolutely want to do that. If we end up finishing the season by playing out our remaining games home and away, and we still get relegated, then we'll be relegated on a sporting basis, entirely fair. We have to accept that, and we would accept that. But what we wouldn't accept and couldn't accept is a situation where we were relegated because the competition changed 3/4 of the way through. And I think that would be the same for any club in our position.
20 clubs, 20 vested interests, 20 different positions. I don't know how you ever find a solution that works for everyone, though.
That's the Premier League's challenge. And, that's one of the reasons why, I've asked for, and I know various other clubs have asked for, a complete picture to be presented to us so that we can look at every single possible angle and try and make sure that we can navigate our way through it the best we can. Clearly, as we said from the start, we need government to give us the go-ahead. We then need the protocols to be workable and agreed by the players and the staff that have to make them happen. We need the clubs on side with the protocols, because ultimately it's the directors like myself that will have liabilities to consider. And then, of course, we want the fans to enjoy the sport. And, we can only really do that if all of those different parts of the puzzle come together. And for us to see the complete picture gives us the best possible chance of reaching the right decisions, not just for individual clubs, because although that's important, it has to be our individual priorities. We've also got to consider the league as well. And if we can, the wider interests of football. We've all got a responsibility to protect the game. I know only too well from my club's point of view, we've been at the lower reaches of the pyramid, We know what it's like down there. We know how difficult it is. It's particularly difficult at the best of times, and this is the worst of times. So we feel very, very sorry for everything that's going on through the football industry at the moment. And we know at the top of it, we've got a degree of responsibility to help where we can. But we've also got to sort out our own club first and look after our own league first. And then if we can help others, of course, we will do so.
And just to be absolutely clear, you want to finish the season. You want to finish the season by playing home and away games, and you are absolutely certain that you can do it safely. You can play games safely at the Amex, right?
Well, I'm not a safety expert, but what I do know is that we've got a very modern stadium, which is very well run. We've been operating, as I said, a testing centre for the last six weeks now. We've been able to secure the perimeter of our stadium. We've been able to control the incomings and outgoings of that facility. And I would be very, very happy to take responsibility for securing my stadium to stage games at the Amex. I think that's something we do with 30,000 people. I'd be very comfortable doing it with 300 people. So, I'm sure every professional football club in the Premier League and right the way down through the pyramid would feel as comfortable as me, because that's what we do. That's our business. Obviously, it's absolutely paramount that we follow protocols and we make sure the environment is as safe as it possibly can be. And we also don't want to put any pressure on the NHS or any of the emergency services who've been doing a wonderful job through the crisis. But if we're going to return to our business, which every business in the country is hoping and looking to do as quickly as possible, we've got to make sure that we do it on a fair basis and a consistent basis. The way we started the league, the way we started back in August is the way we want to end the league, whenever that could be. And then the results will be what they will be. We accept there won't be crowds in the stadium. We accept that it's going to be different. And we accept that, this season is never going to be perfect. There's going to be solutions that we have to find. They're going to involve compromises on all sides. What we don't want to do is compromise the fairness of the competition. And we certainly don't want to compromise the safety of the competition either.
All right. Listen, thank you so much for taking time out to speak to us today. There's been an article as well from Scott Duxbury, the Watford CEO, today, echoing very much your thoughts. They want to finish the season, but neutral venues doesn't work for them either. So we really appreciate your time. Take care of yourself and your family.
Thank you very much. Same to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Right, well, let's catch up then on that same topic with Owen and Steve. Steve, I want to come to you first. This is a really sort of strange situation here where you're asking people like Paul and Scott at Watford and every other football club to make a decision about what their future holds, but without the necessary information. I don't think it's clear to them, is it, why we have to be in neutral venues? It isn't even clear whether it's safe enough to return to playing football. Many people are dying and contracting coronavirus all the time. But maybe no one can give those assurances. Maybe it just isn't the right time to think about football again.
Yeah, I don't think anybody can get those assurances, can't they? And it was great to hear from Paul, because as you rightly mentioned before, everybody's picking up a newspaper or going online and reading some other differing information. So the fact that Paul can come on, speak very clearly with great clarity about what is the situation. But anybody who knows that, if they've been to Brighton's grounds, for instance, because Paul's just been on, the location of the Amex is perfect if you want a nice, quiet building away from a built-up area. So I can totally understand his point of view, and it's a correct point of view. But we just need to find out more information about what is going to happen, and hopefully that will come in the next few weeks. I know the Premier League have got a meeting very soon, and you just want a little bit more clarity, and you need people who are in those type of meetings, like Paul, like Scott Duxbury, as you mentioned, to then relay the information to the public, and we know then, right, this is black and white. It's come from a CEO of one of the Premier League teams. It must be true, rather than just hear some opinion of whoever in a newspaper or online, and it just causes absolute chaos then.
Yeah, I think the days of whether it's sport or whether it's politics, not informing the public, those days are gone, I think. Look, Owen, let's talk about this neutral venue situation, because the Bundesliga are preparing to return. They're going to be returning with home and away venues. This kind of conversation about neutral venues appeared almost out of nowhere. No one's really seen any information about why we have to do it differently to almost everybody else.
Well, from what I understand, the reasoning behind it is, I think they wouldn't have enough police to cover all the 20 stadiums. So I think what they've said is it would be between 8 and 10 neutral venues. I mean, to take Paul Barber's example, I agree with Maka. I thought he spoke terrific. And the point is, 4 of their last 5 home games are against Manchester United, Manchester City, Arsenal, and Liverpool. So if it's a neutral venue, obviously Liverpool have a much stronger squad, and you'd like to think probably in every game they're a significant they will lose the game. So at home, if they're at home, they have an advantage. And I think if the Bundesliga, if they can do home and away and it works, then I can understand why the Premier League teams want to do it. Because as he said, the future of the clubs, £200 million, whatever it is, in the jobs and the infrastructure, everything that builds up would be gone. So I can understand why the teams want to do home and away. And if Bundesliga can do it, why can't we?
I've spoken to numerous players over the last week or so, Steve, who tell me that they've not really had any information about what the risks actually are of returning to play. So you probably have as much information as someone who's a current Premier League player. Based on what you know, would you go back to training in a week or so and look to play a game next month?
Yes, is the honest answer. I would ask the relevant questions. I would speak to my club doctor. I would speak to the people in charge. I would speak to the manager. I would find out what protocols are put in place once I leave my house and get to the training ground. But you would presume there'd be an element of testing on a weekly basis before we get to the first Premier League game restarting. And if that's the case and everybody's getting tested and everybody is negative up until that football match, I would have no problems at all. But like you rightly said, we have to put our trust in the people who know more information than ourselves. But I would, if it is my club doctor who I've had a relationship with for the last 5 years, I would certainly heed his advice. And if everything was fine and everything was safe and we weren't putting pressure on other important services outside of football, I would definitely go ahead and play, yes.
Owen?
I think every football player wants to play. And I think, I think the boys will be itching. I think they'll realise almost what it's like to almost be a retired player in terms of missing the game. I think they'll all be missing the game, but part of what makes the game and these guys so brilliant is the fact they just play on instinct. They just react. And, if you take away that element, if you're worried about something else, if you're worried about, are you going to be too close to someone, are you in the physical contact, maybe it could affect the quality of the game. But I think as players, everybody will want to play if it's safe. And I think everybody's going to have a decision to make whether they want to or not. But I think the boys generally, like Maka and myself, we'd always want to play, but there's so much uncertainty. And like you said, there needs to be a bit more clarity on every level so that the information out there is clear.
And then a whole other story, which we sadly haven't got time to get into, is the factions now that look to be creeping in even more to the Premier League. As we said with Paul, 20 clubs, 20 different agendas. You wonder whether, when all this is over, all of those various rifts and things can be healed as well. Right, gents, thanks very much for now.